Bonjour à toutes et à tous. On va commencer et je donne la parole au directeur de notre laboratoire de l'ENS, Olivier Bara, qui a eu la gentillesse de venir et de Marina Mestre Zaragoza, qui est notre directrice actuelle.
Merci beaucoup Smaranda. Marina et moi sommes vraiment très heureux et très fiers de vous accueillir pour ce colloque consacré à Philon d'Alexandrie. Et on va peut-être commencer, tout c'est bien tout honneur, par féliciter les deux organisateurs de ce colloque, Smaranda Marculescu et Frédéric Gabriel. Ce colloque qui s'inscrit dans la continuité des études philoniennes à Lyon, puisque depuis plus de 50 ans maintenant, ces études se poursuivent depuis ce premier colloque consacré à Philon en 1966, ici à Lyon. Donc merci à tous deux d'entretenir cette flamme et de poursuivre ces travaux dans leur ancrage géographique lyonnais. Nous vous saluons aussi à tous, intervenants de ce colloque, discutants de ce colloque, membres du comité scientifique de ce colloque. Vous venez de l'Europe entière, avons-nous vu sur le programme, mais aussi des États-Unis, d'Australie, d'Israël aussi, je crois, c'est cela. Donc c'est vraiment un colloque à dimension internationale de très grande importance. Et c'est donc au nom de l'IHRIM que nous vous souhaitons la bienvenue ici à l'ENS de Lyon. L'IHRIM, Institut d'Histoire des représentations et des idées dans les modernités, est un laboratoire, une unité mixte de recherche multitutelle, dépendant du CNRS, de l'École normale supérieure de Lyon et des universités Lyon 2, Lyon 3, Jean Monnet de Saint-Étienne et Clermont-Auvergne. Ce colloque Philon s'inscrit particulièrement bien dans nos axes de recherche, en particulier dans 3 de nos axes de recherche. Tout d'abord, dans notre tout premier axe, celui qui fédère vraiment l'ensemble de nos travaux, un axe que nous intitulons « Édition et histoire du livre », donc qui est l'axe dans lequel nous travaillons sur la constitution d'œuvres complètes d'édition critique. Un des premiers volets de vos travaux dans le cadre de ce colloque concerne l'approche philologique des œuvres de Philon, concerne les enquêtes sur les éditions, sur les transmissions via les supports éditoriaux, la question évidemment aussi des traductions. Donc tout cela s'inscrit vraiment parfaitement dans ce premier axe que nous privilégions à l'IHRIM autour du livre. Mais ce colloque s'inscrit aussi dans d'autres axes de nos recherches, en particulier dans celui que nous appelons normes et contre-normes, puisqu'il va être question dans ce colloque de controverses, et aussi dans l'axe consacré à l'histoire des idées, puisque vous allez réfléchir aux apports de la pensée philonienne au fil des siècles. Il va être question de diffusion, de réception, de débat, de controverses. Donc encore une fois, tout cela s'inscrit parfaitement bien dans notre programme de recherche et aussi dans la dimension pluridisciplinaire et pluriséculaire de notre laboratoire, puisque nous essayons de couvrir une période qui va de la fin du Moyen-Âge jusqu'au monde contemporain et jusqu'aux réceptions contemporaines des courants d'idées formant les humanités. Enfin, je voudrais, au nom de l'IHRIM, me réjouir des collaborations institutionnelles qui ont été nouées ou renouées ou entretenues, alimentées grâce à ce colloque. Et là aussi, nous remercions Smaranda et Frédéric pour cela. Lien institutionnel avec le LabEx commode qui soutient cette opération, avec le laboratoire Rhizoma et l'Institut des sources chrétiennes, dans le cadre duquel l'édition des œuvres de Philon d'Alexandrie s'est réalisée en 36 volumes. Lien institutionnel également avec la bibliothèque universitaire d'Hydro, juste à côté de nous, mais aussi avec la bibliothèque municipale de Lyon. Et nous sommes très attachés à ce partenariat avec la bibliothèque municipale de Lyon et aussi avec l'Institut d'histoire du livre, dont l'IHRIM est partenaire, à bien dire, Et nous sommes vraiment très fiers de voir que ce colloque entretient ses liens, entretient ses relations académiques, scientifiques, intellectuelles, qui sont évidemment de toute première importance pour l'ensemble de nos travaux. Et donc, bienvenue à l'IHRIM, bienvenue à Lyon, bienvenue à l'ENS de Lyon, et nous vous souhaitons évidemment de féconds travaux pendant ces journées de colloques internationaux.
Merci beaucoup Olivier. Merci Marina. Et voilà. Donc, chers et chers collègues, mesdames et messieurs, nous voilà réunis pour 3 jours de rencontres lyonnaises autour de Philon, d'Alexandrie et sa réception dans l'Europe moderne des 16e, 18e siècles. Et Frédéric Gabriel et moi-même sommes très heureux de vous accueillir à Lyon et soyez les bienvenus. Dans l'appel à contribution, nous rappelions à quel point les études philoniennes ont été et restent liées au monde académique lyonnais. Olivier Bara vient de le rappeler aussi. Notre présence à l'ENS de Lyon, où Bernard Besnier, éminent philonien, fut professeur, nos sessions à la bibliothèque municipale et aux sources chrétiennes, nous porterons sur les pas de nos prédécesseurs dans cette ville. Et je vais citer seulement des noms du XXe siècle, puisque les autres vont nous occuper assez pendant ces 3 jours. Édouard Herriot, philonien avant d'être maire de Lyon pendant de nombreuses années. Et aussi le père Claude Montdésert, Jean Pouilloux et Roger Arnaldez, qui ont dirigé pendant près de 40 ans la grande entreprise de traduction des œuvres de Philon d'Alexandrie en français, entreprise à laquelle a participé d'ailleurs Monique Alexandre, ici présente. Par notre colloque, comme le disait aussi Olivier, nous souhaitons leur rendre hommage. Ce colloque n'aurait pas pu avoir lieu sans le soutien scientifique et financier de plusieurs institutions partenaires déjà évoquées et de celles qui les dirigent ou encore assurent la gestion. En tant qu'organisateur, Frédéric Gabriel et moi-même tenons à rendre hommage et à remercier les membres du comité scientifique, dont plusieurs nous font aussi l'honneur de leur présence ici. Tous n'avaient pas pu être présents. Catel Berthelot, Marc Fumaroli et Jean-Louis Quentin, par exemple, mais nous les saluons depuis Lyon. La direction de notre laboratoire, l'IHRIM, Olivier Bara et Marina Mestre Zaragoza, nous ont soutenus dès le départ et dans toutes les phases d'élaboration de ce projet. Et en plus, ils nous ont fait l'honneur d'ouvrir aujourd'hui nos travaux et nous leur en sommes particulièrement reconnaissants. Nous remercions vivement de leur soutien dans les institutions de tutelle, le CNRS, l'ENS de Lyon, son vice-président à la recherche, Yannick Ricard, le conseil du Fonds Recherche pour la généreuse subvention, ainsi que le soutien scientifique et administratif, ainsi que nos collègues des départements de philosophie et des lettres. Nos remerciements appuyés vont aussi à l'Oxford Center for Hebrew and Jewish Studies, pour son haut patronage académique, à Johanna Weinberg, au professeur Hugh Williamson, ainsi qu'au conseil académique de cette prestigieuse institution. Comme le disait Olivier, l'un de nos plus généreux et principaux partenaires est le LabEx Commode. Donc tous nos chaleureux remerciements à Pierre Girard, son directeur, et à Pierre-François Moreau, responsable d'axe scientifique, de leur contribution essentielle et indéfectible, là encore à chaque étape de l'élaboration scientifique et de l'organisation de ce colloque. Un autre partenaire important, c'est le GIS, Groupement d'intérêt scientifique Humanité. Nous souhaitons nommer Hélène Casanova-Robin et Béatrice Bacouche, ainsi que le conseil du GIS Humanité pour encore une généreuse subvention. À nos côtés, dès la première heure, Guillaume Badi, ici présent pour l'Institut des sources chrétiennes et le laboratoire ISOMA, ainsi que l'association des Amis des Sources chrétiennes avec Dominique Gonnet et pour l'organisation Dominique Tinel. Ce sont nos hôtes de demain après-midi. Merci infiniment. Nous sommes également reconnaissants et heureux de notre précieux partenariat avec la bibliothèque municipale de Lyon, évoquée tout à l'heure, qui nous accueille cet après-midi. Jérôme Sirdet, Pierre Guinard, conservateur du fonds ancien, nous assurent ainsi une incursion dans le monde concret des premières éditions imprimées philoniennes qui sont au cœur de nos préoccupations ces jours-ci. Nous retrouverons des exemplaires des livres anciens vendredi dans cette salle même grâce à la contribution de la bibliothèque d'Hydro de Lyon. Merci à Claire Jotanengo et à Aurélie Dos Santos de leur participation. L'Institut d'histoire du livre, dont l'IHRIM est membre, nous a également accordé son soutien. Nous souhaitons nommer Gilles Eboli et Joseph Belletante, ainsi que les membres du conseil d'administration. Et tenons aussi à remercier Jean-Robert Armogat pour le partenariat avec la Société d'études du XVIIe siècle. Notre reconnaissance va à la très dévouée et efficace équipe administrative du colloque, Angie Sclon, Diane Laurent, Afida Majidi, Anne-Laure Motkin, Alazuc, de formidables collaboratrices. Lutine Briand, elle est de l'ENS de Lyon et stagiaire au LabEx Commande, est récemment arrivée pour renforcer l'équipe et nous accompagner sur le temps du colloque. Merci Lutine. Merci également à Florence Poncet, à qui l'on doit les beaux visuels, affiches et programmes. Jérôme Sirdet et Mathieu Saumon y ont également apporté leur contribution, ainsi qu'aux membres des équipes de communication technique et logistique de l'ENS de Lyon. Et un grand merci au public, à tous les collègues, aux étudiants, à celles et ceux qui sont venus ou viendront ces jours-ci, parfois de loin, assister au colloque et apporter ainsi leur contribution. Ce colloque, on le sait bien, est un véritable défi, un challenge interdisciplinaire, aussi bien pour les spécialistes de la première modernité que pour les antiquisants. Et il fallait oser pour s'y lancer. Tous nos chaleureux, très chaleureux remerciements vont encore et encore vers vous, éminents chercheurs universitaires, chers et chers collègues qui avaient accepté de jouer le jeu au prix d'importants efforts en amont et en vous déplaçant jusqu'ici depuis les 4 coins de la France, depuis l'Italie, l'Allemagne, le Royaume-Uni, la Belgique, Israël et les États-Unis, sans oublier l'Australie. Merci à celles et ceux d'entre vous qui avaient en outre accepté de nous faire l'honneur de veiller sur le temps et le bon déroulement de nos travaux en présidant les séances. Je dois présenter quelques excuses. Martine Tescherman, Lucia Maddalena Tissi et Pierre-François Moreau, pour diverses raisons de santé ou de contraintes professionnelles, nous rejoindront plus tard, à savoir demain et après-demain pour Pierre-François Moreau. Voilà, grâce à votre contribution scientifique et humaine, Lyon entend bien rester, pour longtemps encore, ville philonienne entre toutes. Et nous vous souhaitons de tout cœur un très agréable séjour et un excellent colloque. Enjoy.
Je serai concis car nous sommes nombreux à parler pendant ces 3 jours et nous devons absolument respecter les horaires prévus. Donc j'en appelle aux présidentes et présidents de séance. Sinon les discussions seront abrégées, ce qui serait dommage. Donc si la méthode de ce colloque est relativement classique, des études de réception, comme il en existe pour les pères de l'Église ou les auteurs païens, entre guillemets, sont sujets les moins un juif hellénophone, platonisant, mais transmis par les auteurs chrétiens en tant que témoins clés du temps qui constitue leur origine, au point même que le célébrissime prologue du 4e évangile prendrait position par rapport à lui lorsqu'il s'agit de penser le logos. Si mon introduction s'intitule « La redécouverte de Philon », c'est pour insister sur le fait que la période choisie, du XVIe au XVIIIe siècle, correspond à un véritable renouvellement dans la connaissance de cet auteur, qui n'est plus seulement médiatisé par les pairs, pour lesquels il constituait tour à tour une référence historique pour Jérôme, exégétique pour Origène, philosophique pour Clément et polémique pour Isidore de Péluse, comme l'a bien montré David Rougnat. Certes, avant même le XVIe siècle, Philon a retenu l'attention de Francesco Filenfo vers 1428, de Giovanni Tortelli vers 1448, et surtout de Lilio Libelli, ou Trifernate, qui traduit plusieurs œuvres de Philon à Rome entre 1447 et 1449, traduction latine dédiée au pape Nicolas V, qui est particulièrement attentif au patrimoine hellénophone. Jusqu'en 1485, Lilio Libelli a continué ce travail pour constituer finalement 6 volumes d'apparats conservés à la Bibliothèque Vaticane, mais qui n'ont quasiment pas, ou peu, pas du tout, circulé. Donc ils sont restés inconnus. L'étude extensive d'Ursula Jettner-Hanner, Humanismus in Umbrien und in Rome, ne nécessitait pas de rouvrir ce dossier. Mais ce qui change au XVIe siècle, pour Philon, comme d'ailleurs pour bien d'autres corpus, c'est la mise en place d'un véritable travail philologique, la comparaison des manuscrits, l'établissement et la traduction des textes à une toute autre échelle que précédemment. Et la diffusion, non plus simplement d'une doxographie, mais de l'œuvre elle-même. La copie manuscrite des textes de Philon est d'ailleurs toujours très active au XVIe siècle, comme vous le savez. L'époque moderne correspond donc à un tournant philologique et herméneutique dans l'appréhension et la connaissance du corpus philonien. Une telle affirmation rejoint d'ailleurs la périodisation que proposait déjà Thomas Billings dans son livre intitulé The Platonism of Philo-Judaeus, publié à Chicago en 1919. Le but de notre colloque n'est évidemment pas d'évaluer le plus ou moins grand degré de scientificité de ces éditions par rapport aux règles de la philologie allemande du XIXe siècle, mais de situer ces travaux dans leur temps comme un moment important et peut-être décisif de lecture et d'interprétation d'un de plusieurs filons, en grande partie utilisés en fonction des intérêts de la période. Jean-Louis Quentin a bien montré comment certains détails en apparence purement érudits relèvent de questions confessionnelles. En outre, ces lectures, par exemple au XVIe siècle, ne sont pas restées lettres mortes, elles ne sont pas restées cantonnées dans leur période. Par exemple, en 1895, dans son édition du De Vita Contemplativa, l'orientaliste oxonien et dreyfusard, Cornwallis Conibert, utilise l'édition de Turned, 1552, et il rappelle la place de Philon dans les controverses sur les origines du monachisme dès le XVIe siècle, une thématique qui n'est pas circonscrite à cette période de la Réforme et qui sera traitée donc par Jérémie Desmules pour le XVIIIe siècle. Ce genre d'usage est emblématique d'un décalage productif entre les documents, les pratiques auxquelles on se réfère et l'identité dont on les investit afin de légitimer une forme ecclésiale présente. Avant même Turneb, qui constitue un repère important, comme nous le verrons avec Gregory Sterling et Michael Cover, plusieurs érudits ont déjà consacré une partie de leur énergie au corpus philonien. À côté d'une grande gloire comme Budé, qui sera évoqué par Marilus de Monet et Luigi Alberto Santi, rappelons les traductions du dominicain Agostino Giustiniani ou de Pierre de Tours. Dans la seconde moitié du XVIe siècle, après l'édition de Turneb, qui constitue un véritable tournant, les publications des textes philoniens vont se multiplier et surtout couvrir plusieurs régions européennes, de Venise à Londres, en passant par Lyon, Paris, Bâle, Fribourg-en-Brisgau, Augsbourg, Heidelberg, Francfort et Harlem, par exemple. Le fait même de posséder des opéras omnia, réédités à plusieurs reprises, modifie forcément la perception de notre auteur, et Smaranda Marculescu se penchera sur l'humaniste tchèque Sigismund Gelenius, ami de Mélenchon et d'Erasme, qui était correcteur des éditeurs Froben, bien connu, et qui est l'un des passeurs les plus importants du corpus philonien dans cette forme des opéras omnia. À côté donc des questions d'histoire du livre, sous quelle forme avait-on accès à ces textes, dans quel réseau, à côté des questions de philologie, quel Philon a-t-on lu, quels sont les manuscrits qui ont véritablement compté, s'ajoute un second niveau de questions. Qui a lu quel texte, et surtout pour faire quoi? Au-delà des différents visages de Philon, dans quel lieu, dans quel contexte, dans quelle controverse l'a-t-on utilisé et éventuellement réinventé? Ou pour le dire autrement, qu'est-ce que cela fait de regarder les controverses de l'époque moderne par le biais des usages de Philon? Malgré la diversité des réponses que l'on peut apporter, de grandes lignes apparaissent rapidement. Transmis par les pères de l'Église, Philon est cité bien sûr avec eux dans les chaînes de preuves et d'arguments, et l'exégèse est un terrain propice à son utilisation, notamment en ce qui concerne la Septante, sur laquelle on trouve tout récemment des indications dans le livre de Nicholas Harding, qui vient de paraître, Criticism and Confession, The Bible in the 17th Century Republic of Letters, donc qui vient de paraître à Oxford Illustrated Press. Nicholas Harding évoque les Exercitationes Biblicae de Jean Morin, Paris 1633, et rappelle que Joseph et Philon servent à l'oratorien pour affirmer que les traducteurs de la Septante ont utilisé les meilleurs manuscrits hébreux. Dès lors, le travail origénien sur la Septante aurait la même canonicité que la Vulgate jéronymienne. Dans le même ordre d'idées, Philon et le pseudo-Philon ont joué un rôle dans la réception de la figure paradigmatique de Moïse, que l'on peut approcher selon différents angles, iconographiques, avec Mathieu Saumon, ou philosophique, avec Pierre-François Moreau, chez Spinoza, et Gianni Paganini, dans la tradition critique de la libre pensée. Issu de ce cadre biblique, mais en s'autonomisant, une autre ligne directrice est constituée par les débats trinitaires, notamment à propos du logos, traduit par Erasme en sermo et non plus en verbum. La matière est riche, très riche, et permet de lier Philon aux thématiques ariennes et à la question de l'héritage platonicien ou non, et de la fondation, dans ce cadre, des dogmes chrétiens. Un thème qui est au centre de l'œuvre, par exemple, de Jacques Souverain, qui attaque le platonisme chrétien, que Martine Mulceau avait étudié. Après avoir publié en 2016 un livre sur platonisme et trinité au XVIIe siècle, Brigitte Cambrin nous fait l'amitié de reprendre à bras-le-corps les nombreux ouvrages de cette époque du point de vue de l'angle philonien. À cette occasion, de nouvelles intersections apparaissent avec l'arminianisme, le socinianisme et l'unitarianisme. Philon n'est pas seulement un exégète, un théologien, il est aussi perçu comme un philosophe, comme un sage, et la Renaissance le situe dans sa généalogie de la Philosophia Perennis, un sujet qui sera traité par Lucia Maddalena Tissi, Claudio Moreschini et François Roudot. On pourrait peut-être se demander si finalement la position d'Harry Bolson ne serait pas à resituer dans cette ligne de lecture de la Philosophia Perennis. À cette figure du philosophe se rattacheront aussi les conférences de Giovanni Benedetto et Martine Pécharmant, qui reviendront sur la question du stoïcisme et du platonisme. À côté d'un Philon transmis par les pères, enrôlé dans les controverses chrétiennes, situé dans la filiation des philosophies antiques et dans la philologie grecque, il ne faudrait pas oublier une autre redécouverte, désormais bien documentée grâce aux travaux de Johanna Weinberg. Grâce à sa traduction du Meor Enayim, Lumière des yeux, paru à Mantoue en 1573, Azaria de Rossi est désormais connu et l'on sait qu'il adresse de fortes critiques à Philon d'Alexandrie, comme par exemple le fait de ne pas se soucier de la loi orale dans ses explications des passages légaux. En revanche, nous le verrons avec Myriam Silvera, Ménassé Ben Israël, même s'il connaît et utilise le texte d'Azaria de Rossi, adopte une autre position, puisque pour lui, Philon appartient pleinement à la tradition juive. Outre la présentation des grandes lignes de notre programme, organisé de manière chronologico-thématique, cette introduction vise à souligner combien la réception de Philon n'intéresse pas seulement les spécialistes de cet auteur, au titre, par exemple, des limbes de l'édition critique. Sous le nom de Philon, on a accès à bien autre chose qu'à sa seule œuvre, et c'est toute la richesse et tout l'intérêt des études de réception. Ouvrir l'éventail des possibles grâce à la diversité des lectures et de leur contexte. Sans doute reste-t-il encore beaucoup de pistes à étudier, et ce colloque vise à préparer un volume qui apportera, nous en sommes certains, du nouveau du point de vue de cette exploration, la réception, et nous espérons qu'il sera enrichi de nouveaux chapitres par rapport à nos 3 journées. Je vous remercie infiniment. Je m'associe évidemment aux remerciements de Smaranda pour tous les participants, discutants, présidentes et présidents. Et je donne immédiatement la parole à Greg Sterling, qui va présider notre première matinée. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much, Smaranda and Frédéric. And since this is very explicitly a colloque international, I will speak in the lingua franca moderna of English, and I hope that you can all understand my Australian accent. First of all, on behalf of all the participants here, I would like to express my warmest thanks to the organisers of this colloque, especially Frédéric and Smaranda and all the other people involved in the organisation for giving us the opportunity to explore such a rich and new theme, Philo's reception in the early modern period. And I'd especially like to thank them for the great care that they took in organising the conference. I have seldom experienced such a meticulous preparation. And so now here we all are, and it's very appropriate that we start with two presentations this morning which focus on the beginning of the Philonic studies in a printed form in the 16th century. And it's my very great pleasure to introduce to you Professor Gregory Sterling here on my right. Professor Sterling has been Dean and Professor of New Testament at the Yale Divinity School since 2013, and before that for many years he was Professor of New Testament at the University of Notre Dame, both institutions of course in the United States. Greg and I first met more than 30 years ago, and since then we've been friends and we have worked together in the area of Philonic studies. And I'd like to draw your attention to the stream of publications that he has written and published on many different aspects of Philonic studies. At present, Greg is, I think, writing at least 6 articles a year, and I have no idea how he manages to do that, besides his very busy duties as Dean. So I'm now going to give him the opportunity to begin our conference by speaking on the edition of Adrianus Ternebus. Professor Greg Sterling.
Thank you, David, very much. I would like to echo his thanks to the organizers for the invitation, to Smaranda and to Frédéric, very much for your kindness in all you've done to prepare for this colloque. I'm looking forward to this. The 16th and 17th centuries are very recent in the perspective of some of us in terms of how we work. So I look forward to learning from you. I have a much longer paper than I can read, so I'm not going to read you my paper. I'm going to summarize. And I have a PowerPoint to assist me doing that. You also have a handout, and I noticed one typographical error already. Under the editio princeps for Philo, it's not 1522, it's 1552. So one of the most remarkable experiences that I've had in my scholarly career was the opportunity to sit and work through the Gutenberg Bible in the Beinecke Library at Yale University. I will never forget the opportunity to flip those pages and read from one of the copies of the first printed books that we had using movable type. I felt like I was answering the siren call of the Renaissance to return to the sources. And now let's see, how does this, I thought this would work this way. So I thought of the statement of Erasmus, but above all, it is imperative to move to the sources themselves, as to the Greeks and the ancients. When that call was issued, it resulted in a flurry of activity that produced a large number of editiones principes of different authors. So, for example, the Editio Princeps of Homer in 1488, 1489, or the Editio Princeps of Aristotle in 1495, to 1498. Or if you'd like to think of the Platonic tradition, the Latin first appeared, the translation of Plato in Latin, in 1485 or 86, but the Greek not until 1513. The gap between the appearance of translations and the editio princeps of the Greek text was even more pronounced in the case of Josephus. We had the Latin appearing as early as 1470, and it was not until at least 24 editions of the Latin had appeared that the Greek finally appeared, when the Greek texts were discovered in the Frobin Monastery and published in 1544. It was within 100 years of Johannes Gutenberg's publication of the Bible around 1455 that the editio princeps of Philo appeared in 1552. I would like to very briefly recount Turnebus's life and then spend the bulk of my time looking at the edition with you and some of the aspects of that edition, and then I will conclude by trying to situate this edition within Philonic scholarship as a whole. So let me begin by just giving you a very brief summary of Turnebus's life, and this I will shorten for the sake of time. Turnebus was born in 1512 in the very beautiful and picturesque city to the southeast of Rouen, Les Andelys, on the Seine. It is a beautiful place. When he was all of just 11 years old, just before his 11th birthday, he went to Paris, where he studied at the Collège de Justice. He was there for about 9 years as a student. Following the reception of his master's degree, he became a lecteur with his very dear friend Léger du Chesne at this same college. And he and Chesne's careers would then follow one another throughout his life, which is an interesting story by itself. We don't know very much about his first 4 posts, but there they are. I'll let you just look at those. But in 1547, his career changed when he succeeded his teacher. His teacher at the Collège de Justice was Toussaint, who was a famous Hellenist and humanist, but a very good Hellenist, who died, and Turnebus received the invitation to succeed his former teacher as professor of Greek, and did so in 1547. He later changed chairs in 1562, in part, I think, so that his dear friend Duchesne could become a lecteur in Latin. So there was a shifting of chairs that took place. If you want, I can fill you in on the details. But at any rate, he did change chairs. But the most important things that happened were 2 during these years. In 1551, Henry II appointed him as the royal printer of Greek. He replaced Robert Etienne, who ran afoul of the Sorbonne for his printing of the Bible, and was, as a result of the controversy, forced to leave Paris and go to Geneva, where a certain other French scholar had settled. And his brother, Charles, didn't want to surrender the type at first, but eventually did surrender the type. And from 1558 1 through 1556, Turnebus was the royal printer. He resigned in 1555, I am not sure why, and was replaced by his colleague, Guillaume Morel, who then held that post, took it up in 1556, and held it until his death in 1564. He was followed in death by Turnebus the following year on June the 12th, 1565, when Turnebus died of tuberculosis, leaving a wife and 5 very young children at his death. The same year that he became the royal printer, he married Madeleine Clément, and of those 5 children, 3 of the sons would later edit or produce their famous father's works posthumously. So during this time, he actually produced, while he was royal printer, 22 editions. 2 editions appeared subsequently. He published in all 61 different works during his life, and then following his death, he added 22 posthumous works, thanks to his colleagues and his own sons. In all, he published works on 22 Greek authors and 12 Latin authors. So the number of texts and the range of the text on which he worked was impressive by any standard. It also meant that he worked quickly. And I'll say a little bit more about that in just a minute. So, let me turn now to the Editio Princeps of Philo, which appeared in 1552. This work has 7 components: the title page, a preface in Greek, a table of contents, testimonia, the text, a list of emendations, and an index. The title page that you see here is significant because it gives you an idea of how Turnebus structured Philo's corpus. I'll come back to that in just a minute. It also tells you where he found the manuscripts out of the Royal Library in Fontainebleau. It gives you his mark, which you will see in most of the editions that he released. The mark is a lance, upright, with a vine and a serpent circling it. It's a rather impressive mark. And then he offers the publication data along with a tribute to the good king, a mighty warrior, to translate the Greek. So that's the title page. In his Greek preface, which is written in somewhat artificial Greek, that is, the Greek is deliberately elevated. It uses a wide range of vocabulary, including some unusual words, and he shows you his control of Greek syntax. To put it bluntly, he was showing off when he wrote this preface in Greek, and between the font and the ligatures and his style, I think Philo is easier to read than Turnebus. But in this preface, he gives us some very valuable information about Philo, including the rationale for the Editio Princeps of Philo. He said, "For Philo was either the first or the most significant of all who saw that there was a certain common connection among all the liberal disciplines, and who perceived, not as something, that theology and philosophy are separated from one another by a great frontier, but rather said that they were related or even sisters." Now, he's saying this within the context of the debate between the Sorbonne and the Royal College. And this is an El Greco portrait of Charles, Cardinal of Lorraine, who was the supporter of the humanists, to whom Turnebus dedicated the volume on Philo. So this is both about Charles and a statement. I think that he's drawing from De Congresu, Philo's allegorical interpretation of Hagar and Sarah, in which he presents the preliminary studies as a prolegomenon to theology proper. And in one famous statement which I've given you on your handout from De Congresu, Philo said, this is at the bottom of page 1, for philosophy is the pursuit of wisdom, and wisdom the knowledge of things divine, human, and their causes. Some of you will recognize the Stoic language there. Therefore, just as the preliminary division is the servant of philosophy, so philosophy is the servant of wisdom. The statement makes me think of the famous line that was used in the medieval period, Philosophia Theologiae Ancilla. So philosophy is the handmaid or the servant of theology. That's the tradition on which Turnebus was drawing. He then refers to the Platonic framework that Philo used and said he makes use of the Platonic intellectual framework in such a straightforward and perceptive way that it has become a proverb that either Plato Philonizes or Philo Platonizes. This is, of course, a famous proverb that is attested as early as Jerome and then is repeated in the tradition. But his appreciation of Philo didn't blind him to some of the challenges of using Philo. So in one sentence that contains 3 conditional clauses, he says, for if he, Philo, understands many concepts differently than in the way that some have been accustomed to understand them, if he is not entirely faultless in the task of exegesis, but departs from the truth, if in his allegorical interpretations he astounds with paradoxes and improbabilities, lenient judgment should be liberal. He appealed for the leniency of judgment by saying that Scripture oftentimes goes beyond the reach of human mind. It makes me think of a very famous statement of Ralph Waldo Emerson, an American intellectual from the 19th century, who in his essay on self-reliance said, hobgoblin, or false consistency, is the hobgoblin of little minds. If I used Emerson's language, Philo does not have, or did not have, a little mind. No one could ever successfully accuse him of consistency. And so this is Turnebus's recognition of those challenges. One of the things that he found particularly problematic was the order in Philo's works within the manuscript tradition. So he says, we have found a great deal of confusion in the order of his works. We have arranged them in the way that we think they were originally set out by the author, who followed, we suppose, the words and stories about Moses sequentially as in a series. And then later, he points out that the works of Philo do not have the same titles in all of the traditions. And anyone who's ever worked with the manuscript tradition knows how true that is. He had 3 manuscripts with which to work. Parasinus Graecus 433 from family L, Parasinus Graecus 434 from family H, and Parasinus Graecus 435 from family C. These all came from the famous library at Fontainebleau. And we actually have the catalog of manuscripts from that time period and know that they were there. I haven't yet seen the manuscript, but this is my reconstruction of the order based on what I was able to gather about the order in the manuscripts from Cohn Vindland and from Goodhart and Goodenough and Turnebus's edition. So I'm not going to spend much time on this, but it's just here. If you look at 433, which was the base text that Turnebus used, you'll quickly see that the sequence of manuscripts is jumbled, and that's being polite. I'm not sure that there's any rationale for the sequence of the Philonic treatises in that manuscript. That was the problem that Turnebus faced when he started trying to put together his edition of Philon. Now, if we think about how he decided to do this, he chose to follow two basic principles. First, he took a statement from Philo, in which Philo, this is the third explanation Philo gave for the structure of the exposition of the law in De Primiis, in which Philo set out how he put the exposition of the law together. Turnebus used that statement as a way of structuring the corpus as a whole. He also found that that statement was inadequate by itself, and then used a statement from Eusebius's Ecclesiastical History, where Eusebius gave these catalog of Philo's works in the library at Caesarea as an additional category. So we ended up with 4 categories, 3 from Philo, 1 from Eusebius. And he said, in addition to that he would use the order in which things appeared in the biblical narrative. So here's a statement from Philo in De Primiis. There are 3 types of oracles through the prophet Moses. The first is the creation of the cosmos, the second is the historical, and the third is the legislative. Those are the first 3 categories for Turnebus. And the fourth are the monobligla that Eusebius mentions in his Ecclesiastical History. So with those, Turnebus attempted to restructure the order of Philo. This chart is a comparison between Turnebus's structure and the order in which we have these texts in Cohn Vindland. So if I can just flag a couple of things as you begin to compare, you'll notice they both begin with Deo Paficium Mundi incorrectly, but they both begin that way. Turnebus is missing Legum Allegoriae 2. He is also missing De Posteritate Caini. He rearranges the order of De Gigantibus and Deus and places them much later. He is again missing De Mutatione Nominu and rearranges the order of Quis Harris in the allegorical commentary. You'll also notice that he has placed De Abrahamo and De Josepho and then De Vita Moses within this whole sequence, where they would fall in the biblical narrative but not in the reconstruction of the work as we have it. So that's just a way of showing you quickly what is in Turnebus versus what is in the Editio Maior of today. Now, there are a couple of other things. He doesn't have complete treatises of all of these manuscripts, and I'll come back to that in just a minute. So what are the challenges in the order in Turnebus? Well, the first thing that I noticed was the table of contents in Turnebus does not match the sequence of the text as they are printed. And however, the pagination listed in the table of contents does. So this is the cosmological, you can see, I hope, on the screen well enough, Cosmopoetica is category number 1, and it basically follows the same sequence that we have today, with the exception of the, it's missing De or Legum Allegoriae 2, and his Legum Allegoriae 2 is our 3. There's a whole problem with that to begin with. And then there's, of course, some misplacements. I'll come back to them in a minute. The Historica, or historical treatises, begin to show some differences in the pagination. So if you look at Quis Harris, the third one up here, you'll see that it's much later. So what I think has happened is after the font, the type was set, he went back through, and in the process of going through, he realized he could improve the order. And so he improved the order for the table of contents and put the proper page numbers in the table of contents. But the printed edition has a different order. So when I realized that, I thought, not only did you find confusion in the manuscripts, but I found confusion in your editio. But anyway, he did get it, did improve it. The part which is most confusing is the legislative part, and I'll come back to that in just a minute. And you can see here, you can also see in this chart that there's some problems in the manuscript tradition where De Specialibus Legibus 1, 280 through 284 is joined with De Sacrificiis 20 through 33. The way that I recognized that was when I looked at the text, I saw that horrific list of vices that's so famous in De Sacrificiis, and knew exactly where that came from when I saw that. That happens one other time. There's a fragment at the very end that comes from De Hebraetate, which was a floating fragment that he puts in. So, to come back, what are the limits in Turnebus's order? Well, the first limit is he doesn't completely solve all of the confusion in the manuscript tradition with respect to De Virtutibus and De Specialibus Legibus. But that's forgivable. I mean, that wasn't solved until Cohn-Vinland. If all of these different sections had titles, the titles did not agree, so he was trying to put them together. And he did a reasonably good job, apart from putting De Specialibus Legibus 4 prior to 1, 2, and 3. But other than that, he did a pretty good job. Perhaps the most important failure, which is again forgivable, is that he did not recognize that Philo actually wrote 3 commentary series. We take that for granted today, and I have defended that and will defend that. But he simply treated them as one series. And so some of the time, it's understandable why he inserted things like De Abrahamo, De Josepho, and De Vita Moses where he did. At other times, I don't understand his rationale. I don't understand why he put De Gigantibus or Deus where he did, or Quis Eris where he did. That makes no sense to me. And the final thing that I would say, in a general way, is the placement of De Opificiu and De Vita Moses has followed Turnebus's placement ever since. And it has been wrong ever since. The only 2 translations that place De Opificiu Mundi where it belongs as the first treatise of the exposition of the law is the German and the modern Hebrew translation. I don't know of any other edition or translation that properly places it at the beginning of the exposition of the law. I would argue, like my predecessor at Yale, in fact this is in the last edition of the Studia Philonica Annual, that De Vita Moses is the introductory work to the exposition and should be placed before De Opificio Mundi. But Turnebus has been very influential. There's one other thing I want to say about the edition, which I haven't had time to verify fully, but what I've seen, it works. But I will add this. In the margins of the text, this is from the beginning of De Vita Moses, and so it's not going to have an example, there are quotation marks in the margin. And I think what he's doing is flagging all of the biblical citations in the text, which means that he recognized the exegetical character of Philo's commentaries at the very outset. And it's interesting, it really wasn't until centuries later that another French scholar, Valentin Nikibrevetsky, championed this and made it a cornerstone for modern research on Philo. But it's there. The way that he operated, and I'll be quick in just summarizing now, is he used what the principle of emendatio ope ingenium. That is, he essentially read 433,Toricinus Graecus 433, and then amended it when it needed corrections. So I went through, because David and I are teaching a seminar at Yale this fall on De Platatione, I went through all of the times that Cohn Vindlin cite Turnebus and looked at how many times they accepted his corrections. They cited him 34 times and accepted Turnebus 25 times, or 74% of the time. And I included two examples in your handout, which I will let you look at. The first one, they elected not to follow Turnebus. The second one, they followed Turnebus, which is far more common. I think it's a testament to the quality of his control of Greek that they followed him as frequently as they did. Now, what can we say about this edition? Well, I think we can say two things essentially. First, this edition became the standard edition of Philo until Thomas Mangue's edition in 1742. In my mind, there are three pivotal editions of the Philonic corpus: Adrianus Turnebus, Thomas Mangue, and then Cohn Vindlin. So there will, and we're going to see, beginning with the next paper, and then a good number of other papers, how the edition of Turnebus was expanded and then translated into Latin and became the Textus Vulgatus, as Cohn called it, and remained influential for almost 200 years. So that's quite an accomplishment all by itself. Philonic scholarship does not change quickly, as you can tell by the dates of these three pivotal editions. The second thing I think we need to say is that we're very fortunate that a humanist of such learning gave us the editio princeps of Philo. His most famous student was none other than Joseph Scaliger, who said about his teacher, Turnebus was the greatest and most learned man of his age. That's pretty high praise from Scaliger. And somebody else who was not known for his hyperbole was Michel Montaigne, who said, Adrien Turnebus knew more and knew what he knew better than any person from his age or any past. And as I worked through this edition with its limits and its faults, there are mistakes in it, there are pages that are misnumbered. My edition of Ternebas, I have my own personal copy, is missing a page. So it just was never included, but remember all these things were done by hand, so I understand why. You could point all those things out. But given all of that, it is an impressive achievement. And I think we're very fortunate that the Editio Princeps of Philo was produced by such a learned Hellenist. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg, for that splendid overview of the very first edition of Philo's works by Adrianus Ternebas, and you've kept very well to your time, so we now have at least 10 minutes for follow-up questions. Who would like to ask the first question? Madame Alexandre.
Ce qui est curieux dans la préface, c'est ce qu'il a retenu de Philon, c'est-à-dire cette thèse que la philosophie, les arts libéraux, la philosophie sont des servantes de la foi, de la théologie. Or, c'est tourné un peu vers le passé patristique et médiéval, cette place accordée à ce grand problème du statut des arts libéraux et de la philosophie par rapport à la foi. Chez Clément, chez Origène, Grégoire de Nice, Grégoire de Nazianze, il y a déjà une importance énorme accordée à ce passage du décongressu qui a beaucoup d'écho dans le reste de l'œuvre. Et au Moyen-Âge, ça se cristallise dans la formule philosophia anquila théologie. Alors ça a un côté un peu archaïque, le choix fait dans la préface. Je ne sais pas ce que vous en pensez. Pourquoi a-t-il choisi ce thème?
So why isn't an archaic formula that he uses here? Isn't surprising? Yeah.
Well, merci beaucoup. I think it has to be understood within the context of the debate between the Sorbonne and the Collège. And the debate was who would control the publication of these texts and who could produce these texts. And the theologians were saying that some of the people printing the text had no business printing them because they didn't understand theology. They were specialists in Greek and Latin but didn't control theology. And so the rationale for this citation, which is archaic, is that he's showing that in the ancient world, that in Philo, the marriage is already realized. And it's a way of defending the fact that he, as a humanist, can publish such text and that others can publish such text, and there shouldn't be this false dichotomy between theologia and philosophia. That's how I read it, and that's what I think is the rationale.
If I could just add to that, when he says they were related or even sisters, I think he's actually going further than Philo, because it's very clear in De Congressu that it's a relationship between the mistress and the servant. But here they become sisters, and I think that is to be explained through the polemical situation.
So I think the first half of the preface is all about the battle that's taking place in Paris at that time. And he thanks Charles for his intervention. He talks about Charles as the patron who has protected France as the homeland for the Muses to reside, and is grateful that he has not allowed the Muses to be expelled from France. So that's the context that is the framework for this particular statement. But thank you for your question.
Yes, please.
May I ask whether there was an impact of this edition on the French theologians as opposed to the Protestant theologians of the late 16th century, early 17th century? What was the impact on the followers of those Sorbonne?
Yeah. I can't answer that question. I hope that this is why I'm here. I'm here to learn from people who know the 16th century. It's a great question. I mean, Philo was a standard author in the Christian tradition. That is, he became standard reading, which is why he was preserved. But clearly, Turnebus knows him as a Jewish author and cites the Suidas, or the Suda, which identifies him as Jewish. Other traditions identified Philo as Christian, so the whole legend about Philo's conversion. But I can't answer what theologians in the Sorbonne said about Philo. I don't know. Does anyone know? It's a great question. It's a very good question. I'm sorry I can't answer.
I'm not answering the question, but can I just bring out another aspect of that question, which is in his Latin translation of the Economics, Turnebus explicitly calls Philo a pagan writer, a profane writer. So neither Christian nor Jewish, perhaps. So how does that fit into this quote here and into our understanding of how Turnebus conceived of?
Yeah. So I understand that statement to mean he's not Christian, but not to deny that he's Jewish because he's already identified him as Jewish. But I think it's a way of saying that he's not a Christian writer. Do you, Michael?
I just want to mention also in the Greek preface, he explicitly, well, it's interesting that he's a pagan in the Latin because in the Greek preface he's presented as Judaisdom, right, as Judaizing and Hellenizing. Have that on Martin Hengel. But so I think there is, I would agree with Greg's statement there that I'm not exactly sure. He kind of is a man that falls between the stools in a way. On the issue of the sisters, though, I also noted when I was working through this in De Congressu 18, rhetoric and dialectic are called sister and twin. And I don't know if, I agree with you, David, that that Turnebus is going further, but I wonder if that sister and twin language, I tend to think De Congressu is very, very important for this preface, and that it would repay revisiting lots of things in that dialogue vis-a-vis the preface for Turnebus' portrait. So I would say Judaisdom tekai Hellenisdom, right? That's the Greek and the Latin Philo. Which one is the real opinion? Maybe he changed his mind.
Yeah, I'll give you my translation of the statement. For the genuine and true form of philosophy mentions the same initiatory rites as theology, even if it does not admit them in the same way. He, meaning Philo, mixes the best and the sweetest wine, like a potion, from both, at the same time Hellenizing and Judaizing, philosophizing and theologizing. So he's identifying in this theologizing with Judaizing and philosophizing with Hellenizing is the way that he does it. So I think in De Vita Moses that, and some may not know this, but this was Turnebus's translation in 1554, so 2 years later when this appeared. And it was the standard way that Turnebus provided, apart from providing annotations, a commentary of sorts on a text, was to translate the text into Latin. That is, he liked to translate into Latin. So this was, and it's interesting, that's the text he chose. So, at any rate, but that's the quotation.
Can I follow up just one more thing? I've thought a little bit about who can read the Greek preface and who can't. Right? So it's interesting that he's going to call Philo one who Judaisdon, but you have to be able to read Greek to know that he said that. Whereas in the more accessible Latin preface, he's going to say he's a pagan. I've wondered about the coded nature of the Greek, using it as a kind of intellectual sprache that people have to be able to get into. So, a really interesting question, John.
Yeah.
Could I just come down slightly on Joanna's side? It's really asking, it's sort of inviting a bit more, sort of extra way we can try to make sense of that use of profane in the Latin. Are we saying that we do think or don't think that that term would have been applied by Turneb to, say, an author of the Hebrew Bible, or a non-biblical, a different Jewish author, say a rabbinic source or something like that? I'm not sure that, personally, I wouldn't imagine Turneb would use that word even for any sort of source from rabbinic Judaism.
Josephus?
Yeah, so
possibly Josephus, but
yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I haven't done a study of where he uses the Latin profanus, but my assumption would be that for a text like the Hebrew Bible or the Old Testament, that is a Christian text for him. I mean, it becomes part of the Christian tradition. So I don't think he would call Moses profane, but I could be wrong. I just don't think he would. I do think he could call Josephus profane and be consistent with Philo.
Yeah.
And whether he referred to, I'm not aware of his ever citing rabbinic sources. I mean, he's working in Greek and Latin almost exclusively, so I don't know that he knew any Hebrew. He may have. He was a very gifted linguist. He may have. I just don't know of any evidence for that.
Well, there were plenty of
Latin
rabbinic
translations.
sources available in Latin. I suppose I'm wondering again, would he have used Judaisdom for a rabbinic source? Probably not. So there is something about this peculiar language that I agree it could well be applied to the sort of thing he'd apply to Josephus as well, but there's something distinctive about Jewish Greek authors and the way they're being described that's slipping sort of between the cracks, as it were, of other languages humanists have for these sources.
Yeah, if we knew more about how Philo was perceived broadly, it would help. So when I first looked at this, I thought, does he edit any other Christian text? Or does he just stay away from Christian text? But he does edit Christian text. So if you go back to the list that I gave you, and sorry, this take me just a minute to go back, but you'll see that there are a number of Christian texts that he edited. Too many charts. I apologize, it's a little slower than... All right, so there you can see Clement of Rome is perhaps the most signal example. So it's not that he stayed away from all Christian authors, but he never does edit a biblical text. He stays away from anything biblical. I don't know that that was really his interest. But if we knew how Philo was perceived, I think that his edition of Philo is really a way of trying to say, here is a bridge between these two worlds.
I think our time is up. So let's again thank Greg for his fascinating presentation.